The dusty envelope had appeared on Nora's doorstep that morning in Idaho City, like a ghost from her past. And when she opened it with trembling fingers, the words blurred before her eyes. "I'll be at the old oak tree if you feel the same way." Her heart hammered against her ribs as she stood in the doorway of her modest boarding house. The September wind of 1878 carrying the scent of pine and earth through the Idaho mountains. She had not seen Wade Bennett in 3 years, not since the day he rode out of town without a word, leaving her standing at the mercantile with a basket of supplies and a heart full of questions. Now he was back, or at least his words were, and the familiar slant of his handwriting made her knees weak. Nora Mitchell pressed the note against her chest and closed her eyes, remembering the way Wade used to look at her across the church pews on Sunday mornings, the way his calloused hands felt when they accidentally brushed hers at the summer dance, the way he smiled like he knew secrets the rest of the world had forgotten. She had been 19 then, fresh-faced and hopeful. Now at 22, she had learned to guard her heart, to focus on her work as a seamstress, to stop scanning every crowd for his face. But here was his note, simple and direct, asking everything without asking anything at all. She walked back inside, her mind racing. The boarding house where she rented a small room was quiet at this hour, most of the other residents out working their claims or tending to business in town. Idaho City had seen better days since the gold rush peak, but it still hummed with the energy of people trying to carve out their fortunes from the unforgiving mountain soil. Nora had arrived here with her aunt 5 years ago after her parents died of fever back in Missouri. Her aunt had passed 2 years later, leaving Nora alone but resilient, determined to make her own way. Wade had been one of the first people she met in Idaho City. He worked breaking horses for the local ranchers, a tall man with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of creek water. He was 21 when they first spoke, standing outside the livery stable with dust on his boots and a gentle smile that made her forget her shyness. They had fallen into an easy friendship that summer, walking together after church, sharing meals at the town socials, talking about everything under the wide Montana sky. No, Idaho sky, she corrected herself. Sometimes the vastness of the West made all the territories blur together in her memory. Then one morning, Wade was gone. No explanation, no goodbye, just an empty space where he used to be. She heard rumors he had joined a cattle drive heading south, that he had family troubles, that he had gotten into a dispute with one of the ranch owners. None of it mattered because he had left without telling her, and that silence had hurt more than any words could have. Now he wanted to meet at the old oak tree. Nora knew exactly which tree he meant. It stood at the edge of town where the road curved toward the mountains, a massive oak that seemed impossible in this landscape of pines and aspens. Some said a prospector had planted it years ago as a reminder of home. Others claimed it had always been there, a stubborn survivor in the wrong climate. She and Wade had sat beneath its branches many times, talking until the stars came out, and she had often wondered if he remembered those evenings the way she did. She looked down at the note again, studying every word. He had not signed it, but he did not need to. She would recognize his handwriting anywhere, and besides, who else would summon her to their special place? But what did he mean by "if you feel the same way"? The same as what? Did he finally feel what she had felt all those years ago, the pull of something deeper than friendship? Or was this about something else entirely? Her practical side told her to ignore it, to crumple the note and throw it in the stove. He had left her once without explanation. What would stop him from doing it again? But her heart, that foolish, persistent muscle, told her she would regret it forever if she did not at least hear what he had to say. She owed herself that much. Nora changed out of her work dress into her Sunday best, a deep blue calico that brought out the color of her eyes. She pinned her dark hair carefully, allowing a few curls to frame her face. As she studied herself in the small mirror, she barely recognized the hopeful young girl she had been. This woman staring back was stronger, more cautious, but still capable of hope despite everything life had thrown at her. The walk to the oak tree took 15 minutes through the heart of Idaho City. She passed the general store where old Mr. Henderson sat on his porch whittling, the saloon where piano music already tinkled despite the early hour, the church with its white painted steeple reaching toward the mountains. People nodded as she passed, and she returned their greetings automatically, her mind elsewhere. The oak tree came into view and her steps slowed. She could see a figure standing beneath it, hat in hand, and even from a distance she knew it was Wade. He was taller than she remembered, broader through the shoulders, but he stood the same way he always had, weight on one leg, relaxed but alert. As she drew closer, he turned and their eyes met. 3 years fell away in an instant. "Nora," he said, and his voice was exactly as she remembered, low and warm like whiskey. "Wade." She stopped a few feet away, maintaining distance, protecting herself. "I got your note. I was not sure you would come." He turned his hat in his hands, a nervous gesture that surprised her. Wade Bennett had never seemed nervous about anything. "I almost did not." The words came out sharper than she intended, and she saw him flinch. Good, she thought. Let him feel a fraction of what I felt. I deserved that. He took a step closer, and she could see the changes in him now. Lines around his eyes from squinting into the sun, a scar along his jaw that had not been there before, a weariness that suggested hard years. "I owe you an explanation. I owed you one 3 years ago, but I was too much of a coward to give it. So what changed?" Nora crossed her arms, a barrier between them. "Everything," Wade said simply. "I changed. The world changed, and I realized that running from the truth does not make it any less true." "What truth?" He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw vulnerability in his face that made her heart ache. "That I was in love with you, Nora Mitchell. That I have been in love with you since the first day I saw you walking down this very road with flower on your dress and determination in your eyes. And that scared me more than any bronco or any outlaw or any damn thing I have ever faced." The words hung in the air between them, and Nora felt her carefully constructed walls begin to crack. "You left because you loved me. That makes no sense, Wade." It made sense to a scared 21-year-old boy who had nothing to offer a woman like you. He took another step closer. "My father had just died, drunk himself into the grave. My brother was headed down the same path. I looked at myself and saw the same weakness, the same inability to stay in one place or be what anyone needed. I was terrified I would drag you down with me. So you just left without a word. I know it was wrong. I have known it every day for 3 years. But I thought a clean break would be easier for you. I thought you would forget about me and find someone better, someone who could give you the life you deserved." Nora felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. "You do not get to decide what I deserve, Wade Bennett. You do not get to make that choice for me. You are right. You are absolutely right, and I am not asking you to forgive me. I am just asking you to listen." She nodded slowly, giving him permission to continue. Wade exhaled as if he had been holding his breath. "I left Idaho City and joined a cattle drive to Texas. Spent 2 years moving herds, sleeping under the stars, trying to outrun my feelings. But you were in every sunset, every campfire, every quiet moment. I saved every penny I earned. I stayed sober, not a drop of whiskey, because I did not want to become my father. I worked until my hands bled, and then I worked some more. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small leather pouch. "I bought land, Nora. 160 acres about 10 miles north of here, with a creek running through it and good grazing. I built a cabin with my own hands, spent the last year getting it ready. I have horses now, and I have a contract to supply the army fort with mounts. It is not much, but it is mine, and it is honest, and it is a start." Nora stared at the pouch, understanding flooding through her. "You came back because you think you are good enough now. I came back because I realized I will never be perfect, but I can be better. I can be a man who keeps his promises, who works hard, who builds something lasting. And I came back because I have spent 3 years trying to stop loving you, and it has not worked. It will never work." He opened the pouch and pulled out a simple gold ring. "This was my grandmother's. Only decent thing my father ever gave me. Said she would want me to give it to someone worthy. I cannot think of anyone more worthy than you, Nora. I am not asking you to marry me right this second. I know I have a lot to prove. But I am asking if you still feel anything for me, anything at all, because if you do, I will spend the rest of my life showing you that I am worth the risk." Nora looked at the ring glinting in the morning sun, then at Wade's face, open and vulnerable in a way she had never seen before. Part of her wanted to protect herself, to tell him it was too late, that he had hurt her too badly. But another part, the part that had kept his memory alive through 3 long years, recognized the truth in his words. "You broke my heart, Wade." Her voice shook. "For months, I thought it was something I did, something I said. I replayed every conversation, looking for the moment I drove you away. I cried myself to sleep more nights than I can count. And then I got angry, and I decided I was better off without you. I built a life here, a good life, and I do not need anyone to complete me. I know." Wade's eyes never left hers. "You are the strongest person I know, Nora Mitchell. You do not need me, but I am asking if maybe, just maybe, you want me anyway." The tears came then, sliding down her cheeks despite her efforts to stop them. "I waited for you. For almost a year I waited, hoping you would come back or at least send word. Do you know how foolish I felt? I am so sorry." Wade stepped forward and gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "I would take it all back if I could. I would do everything differently. You cannot take it back." She pulled away from his touch, needing the distance. "And I cannot just pretend those 3 years did not happen. I need time to think about this, Wade. I need to figure out if I can trust you again." "I understand." He closed his hand around the ring. "Take all the time you need. I am not going anywhere. I will be here waiting, hoping, doing everything I can to show you I have changed." Nora wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. "Where are you staying?" "I have a room at the boarding house on 3rd Street, and I will be working with horses at the Carmichael Ranch during the day. You can find me whenever you are ready to talk. Or if you decide you do not want to see me again, I will respect that too. But I had to try, Nora. I had to tell you the truth." She nodded, not trusting her voice. The emotions swirling inside her were too complex to name, anger and hurt and hope and longing all tangled together. She turned to walk away, then paused and looked back at him. "The land you bought, the cabin you built, does it have windows facing east? You always said you wanted to watch the sunrise with your morning coffee." A slow smile spread across Wade's face. 3 windows facing east and a porch where you can sit and see the mountains turn gold." Despite everything, Nora felt her lips curve into a small smile. "That sounds nice. It could be yours too," Wade said quietly. "If you want it, if you want me." She did not answer, just walked away with her heart hammering and her mind racing. Behind her, she heard Wade settle onto the ground beneath the oak tree, as if he planned to wait there forever if necessary. The next few days passed in a blur of confusion and soul-searching. Nora threw herself into her work, taking on extra sewing projects to keep her hands busy and her mind occupied. But at night, lying in her narrow bed, she could not stop thinking about Wade's words, the sincerity in his eyes, the ring that had belonged to his grandmother. She talked to her friend Sarah, who ran the boarding house where Nora lived. Sarah was a widow in her 40s, practical and kind, and she listened without judgment as Nora poured out the whole story. "What does your heart tell you?" Sarah asked when Nora finished. "My heart says to give him another chance, but my head says I am a fool. Your head is trying to protect you, which is smart, but sometimes we have to take risks for the things we really want." Sarah poured them both more tea. "The question is, do you believe he has changed?" "I do not know." "How can anyone know for sure?" "You cannot, not really, but you can pay attention to his actions. Words are easy, Nora. It is what a man does that shows his character." Nora took that advice to heart. Over the next 2 weeks, she watched Wade from a distance. She saw him working at the Carmichael Ranch, patient and skilled with the horses, never losing his temper even when they tested him. She heard from Mr. Henderson that Wade had paid off a debt for a struggling miner, asking for nothing in return. She learned from the pastor that Wade had volunteered to repair the church roof, spending his Sundays on a ladder instead of resting. He did not seek her out or pressure her, though she often felt his eyes on her when their paths crossed in town. He would tip his hat respectfully and keep walking, giving her the space she needed. One afternoon, Nora was coming out of the general store when she saw a commotion near the livery stable. A horse had broken loose from its restraints and was panicking in the middle of the street, bucking and kicking dangerously close to a group of children. People were shouting, trying to scatter, but one little boy had frozen in fear, too close to the horse's hooves. Wade appeared seemingly from nowhere, running toward the boy. In one smooth motion, he scooped the child up and rolled away from the horse, shielding the boy with his own body. Then he stood, speaking in a low, calm voice to the panicked animal. Nora watched in amazement as the horse gradually settled, drawn by Wade's confidence and gentle handling. Within minutes, he had the animal calmed and secured, and was checking to make sure the boy was unharmed. Nora found herself walking toward them before she consciously decided to move. "That was brave," she said when she reached Wade. He looked up, surprise and pleasure flickering across his face. "Just doing what needed doing." The little boy's mother rushed over, thanking Wade profusely. He deflected her gratitude with characteristic humility, then turned his attention back to Nora. "Can I walk you home?" he asked. She hesitated only a moment before nodding. "All right." They walked in silence for a while, the afternoon sun warm on their shoulders. Finally, Nora spoke. "I have been watching you, I know." Wade glanced at her with a hint of amusement. "You are not as subtle as you think. And what do you think I have learned? I hope you have learned that I meant what I said, that I am not the same man who left 3 years ago." "I think," Nora said slowly, "that you are trying very hard to prove yourself, but I also think you have always been a good man, Wade. You were just too scared to see it." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "Does that mean you are willing to give me a chance?" "It means I am willing to spend more time with you, to get to know the man you are now, not the boy I remember." She met his eyes steadily. "But you need to understand something, Wade Bennett. If you leave again, if you run when things get hard, there will not be a third chance. I deserve better than that, and I think you know it. I do know it, and I promise you, Nora, I am done running. Whatever comes, we face it together or we do not face it at all." The certainty in his voice settled something inside her. "Then yes, you can walk me home. And maybe tomorrow, you can tell me more about this land you bought and this cabin you built." Wade's face lit up like dawn breaking. "Tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day you will let me." They resumed walking, and this time when their hands accidentally brushed, Nora did not pull away. She let her fingers intertwine with his, feeling the calluses and the strength and the warmth she remembered so well. Over the following weeks, Wade and Nora rebuilt what had been broken between them. He told her stories about his time on the cattle drives, the hardships and the lessons learned. She told him about her work, about the women she sewed for, and the community she had built in his absence. They went on long rides into the mountains, picnicked by streams, and talked about their hopes for the future. Wade brought her to see his land on a crisp October afternoon. They rode out of Idaho City as the aspens turned gold, following a winding trail that climbed into the foothills. When they crested a rise, Wade pointed down into a valley where a log cabin sat beside a creek, smoke curling from its chimney. "That is home," he said simply. Nora's breath caught. It was beautiful, rustic but well built, nestled among the pines with the mountains rising behind it. Wade had been telling the truth about the windows facing east, and she could imagine the sunrises they would frame. He helped her down from her horse and led her inside. The cabin was a single large room with a sleeping loft above, a stone fireplace dominating one wall, and simple furniture that Wade had clearly built himself. Everything was clean and well maintained, ready for a life to be lived here. "It is not fancy," Wade said, watching her face anxiously. "But it is solid. The roof does not leak and the fireplace draws properly. There is room to add on when we need more space." "When we need more space," Nora repeated, turning to look at him. "You are very sure of yourself, Mr. Bennett." He crossed to her and took her hands. "I am sure of one thing, and that is how I feel about you. Everything else I am willing to figure out as we go. But I need to know, Nora. Have I proven myself? Can you see a future with me?" She looked around the cabin again, seeing not just what was but what could be. She imagined curtains on those windows, a garden beside the creek, children playing in the meadow. But more than that, she imagined herself and Wade building a life together, facing whatever challenges came their way as partners. "I can see it," she admitted. "I can see us here happy. And that terrifies me almost as much as it excites me." "We can take it slow," Wade assured her. "We have time." But Nora shook her head. "We have already lost 3 years, Wade. I do not want to waste any more time being afraid. If we are going to do this, let us do it right." She reached up and pulled his face down to hers, kissing him with all the pent-up longing and hope and love she had been holding back. Wade responded immediately, wrapping his arms around her and holding her close as if he would never let go. The kiss deepened, years of separation melting away in the warmth of their reunion. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Wade rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me, Nora Mitchell. Not someday, not eventually. Marry me as soon as we can arrange it. I want to start our life together now." "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you." He pulled the ring from his pocket, where he had apparently been carrying it every day, and slipped it onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. They were married 3 weeks later in the little white church in Idaho City, with what seemed like the whole town turning out to witness their union. Sarah served as Nora's witness, and the Carmichael Ranch foreman stood up for Wade. The pastor spoke about second chances and the power of forgiveness, and Nora felt tears of joy streaming down her face as Wade slipped a matching gold band onto her finger and promised to love her for the rest of their days. The wedding celebration lasted into the evening, with music and dancing and more food than they could possibly eat. But eventually, Wade helped Nora onto her horse, now loaded with her belongings, and they rode out to their cabin under a sky full of stars. Their first months of marriage were an adjustment, learning to share space and merge their lives. Nora brought her sewing materials and set up a work area near the best window light. Wade built her a proper table and shelves for her fabrics and threads. She learned to cook on the fireplace, and he learned to be patient when experiments did not turn out as planned. They worked together to prepare for winter, chopping wood and preserving food, weatherproofing the cabin against the harsh Idaho mountain cold. The first snowfall came in early November, and they woke to a world transformed, everything white and silent. Wade built up the fire while Nora made coffee, and they sat together watching the sun rise over the mountains, just as he had promised, wrapped in blankets and each other's warmth. "Are you happy?" Wade asked, his arm around her shoulders. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Nora answered honestly. "There were times I thought I would never feel this way, that I had missed my chance. But this is worth the wait, Wade. You are worth the wait." He kissed the top of her head. "I will spend every day trying to deserve you. You already do, but I will not stop you from trying." They laughed together, and Nora thought about how far they had come from that morning when she found his note. The hurt and uncertainty seemed like distant memories now, replaced by a deep and abiding love built on honesty and commitment. Winter settled in hard that year, with snow piling high around the cabin and temperatures dropping below zero. But inside, Nora and Wade created their own warmth. They spent long evenings by the fire, Wade carving wood while Nora sewed, talking about everything and nothing. He taught her to play poker, and she taught him to dance properly. They read to each other from the few books they owned, creating voices for the characters and laughing at their own theatrical performances. When the snow was not too deep, Wade would ride out to check on his horses, making sure they had shelter and feed. Sometimes Nora went with him, bundled in every warm thing she owned, just to break the monotony of cabin life. She loved watching him work, the gentle competence with which he handled the animals, the respect he showed them. One particularly harsh day in January, they were snowed in completely, unable even to open the door against the drifts. Wade made jokes about having to tunnel out like miners, and Nora laughed despite her worry about their supplies. But he had planned well, and they had plenty of food and firewood to see them through. That was the day Nora told him she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but wanted to be sure before saying anything. Wade's reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He picked her up and spun her around, then immediately set her down gently, worried he might hurt her. His eyes were wet with tears as he knelt and pressed his ear to her still flat belly, as if he could hear their child's heartbeat. "We are going to be parents," he said wonderingly. "Nora, we are going to have a baby." "Are you scared?" she asked, running her fingers through his hair. "Terrified," he admitted. "But in the best way possible. I want to be a good father, Nora. I want to be everything my father was not." "You will be," she assured him. "I have no doubt about that." The pregnancy gave them something new to focus on through the remaining winter months. Wade started building a cradle from carefully chosen wood, spending hours sanding and finishing it until it was smooth as glass. Nora sewed tiny clothes, marveling at how small they were. They debated names endlessly, laughing at their most outlandish suggestions. Spring came slowly that year, but when it finally arrived, it brought an explosion of life. Wildflowers covered the meadow around their cabin, and the creek ran high with snowmelt. Wade's horses had made it through the winter in good health, and several of the mares were expecting foals. The parallel between the horses and Nora's condition was not lost on them. "New beginnings all around," Wade said one morning as they watched a mare nurse her newborn foal. "A good year," Nora agreed, her hand on her rounded belly. She continued taking sewing commissions from women in town, though Wade worried about her riding back and forth in her condition. Eventually, they compromised, with Wade accompanying her to Idaho City once a week to deliver finished work and pick up new projects. These trips became social occasions, a chance to maintain their ties to the community and remind themselves they were not alone in the wilderness. Sarah was beside herself with excitement about the coming baby, knitting blankets and booties at a furious pace. The pastor's wife gave Nora advice about childbirth, some helpful and some terrifying. The town doctor, an elderly man who had seen everything, checked on Nora regularly and declared her healthy and strong. As summer heated up, Nora found herself increasingly uncomfortable. Her back ached, her ankles swelled, and she felt like an ungainly cow. But Wade never stopped treating her like she was beautiful. He would rub her feet in the evenings, help her up from chairs, and tell her constantly how amazing she looked carrying their child. "You are a terrible liar," she told him one particularly hot August evening as she tried to find a comfortable position. "I am not lying. You glow, Nora. You are creating life, and it is the most incredible thing I have ever seen." His sincerity made her tear up, though that happened a lot these days. "I love you, Wade Bennett. I love you too, Nora Bennett, more than I have words to say." Their son was born on a sweltering night in late August. Nora's labor started in the afternoon, and Wade rode for the doctor while Sarah, who had been staying with them for the last few weeks, helped Nora prepare. The doctor arrived just before sunset, his calm presence reassuring both Nora and Wade. The labor was long and hard, and there were moments when Nora thought she could not go on. But Wade never left her side, holding her hand, wiping her face with cool cloths, telling her how strong she was and how much he loved her. When their son finally entered the world, crying lustily and waving tiny fists, Nora felt a rush of love so intense it took her breath away. "He is perfect," Wade said, tears streaming down his face as the doctor placed the baby in Nora's arms. "You are both perfect." They named him Thomas, after Nora's father. Thomas Wade Bennett, born on August 23, 1879, weighing 7 pounds and healthy as could be. Wade could not stop staring at his son, tracing the tiny fingers and toes, marveling at every feature. "I never knew," he said quietly that first night, holding Thomas while Nora slept. "I never knew my heart could hold this much love." The first months with a baby were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Thomas was a good baby, but he still needed to be fed every few hours, day and night. Nora and Wade took turns walking him when he was fussy, singing lullabies and telling him stories. They were operating on minimal sleep, but neither would have traded it for anything. Wade proved to be a natural father, patient and gentle with their son. He would carry Thomas in a sling while doing chores, talking to him constantly about the horses and the mountains and the life they were building together. Nora would watch them sometimes, her heart overflowing with gratitude for this life she had nearly given up on. As Thomas grew, so did their love for each other. They had weathered challenges and come out stronger, building a foundation of trust and mutual respect that nothing could shake. Wade never took Nora for granted, always making sure she knew how much he appreciated her. And Nora learned to fully trust Wade, to believe that he would not run when things got hard. The business expanded as Wade's reputation for training quality horses spread. Ranchers and the Army fort kept him busy, and the income was steady. They were able to add onto the cabin, creating a separate bedroom and a larger kitchen. Nora's sewing business continued to thrive, and she was able to save money for Thomas's future. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm over the next few years. Thomas grew into a curious, active toddler who loved following his father around and playing with the gentlest of the horses. Wade taught him to ride before he could barely walk, and Nora taught him his letters and numbers. When Thomas was 3, Nora became pregnant again. This time, she knew what to expect, and the pregnancy seemed easier despite having a toddler to chase. Their daughter was born in the spring of 1882, a tiny, delicate thing they named Emma Rose. If Wade had been smitten with his son, he was absolutely besotted with his daughter. Emma had Nora's dark hair and Wade's creek water eyes, and she wrapped her father around her little finger from day one. Thomas took his role as big brother seriously, always wanting to help care for his sister. The cabin rang with laughter and sometimes tears, with the sounds of childhood and family. Wade and Nora worked hard but made sure to take time for each other, stealing moments alone when the children napped or after they went to bed. Their love had deepened and matured, becoming something solid and enduring. One evening, when Thomas was 5 and Emma was 2, they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. The children played in the yard, Thomas showing Emma how to make dandelion chains. Wade's arm was around Nora's shoulders, and she leaned into his warmth. "You ever think about that morning?" Nora asked. "When you left the note?" "I think about it often," Wade admitted. "I think about how close I came to losing you forever because I was too scared to be honest. I am glad you found your courage. I am glad you gave me a second chance. Not everyone would have." Nora tilted her face up to kiss him. "You were worth the risk." "We are worth the risk," Wade corrected. "This family, this life, it is everything I never knew I needed." They watched their children play as the sun sank lower, turning the sky brilliant shades of orange and pink. Thomas helped Emma up when she fell, and her laughter carried on the evening breeze. The horses grazed peacefully in the meadow, and smoke from a neighbor's cabin rose in the distance, a reminder that they were part of a larger community. As the years passed, the Bennett family continued to grow and thrive. Wade's horse business became one of the most respected in the territory, and Nora's sewing skills were in constant demand. They added more rooms to the cabin as their family expanded, welcoming 2 more children, another son named Jack and a daughter named Alice. Thomas grew into a young man who shared his father's way with horses and his mother's gentle strength. Emma became a skilled seamstress, learning at Nora's side and developing her own artistic flair. Jack was the adventurous one, always exploring the mountains and bringing home stories of his discoveries. Alice, the baby, was quiet and thoughtful, preferring books to outdoor activities, but loving her family fiercely. Wade and Nora aged gracefully, their love deepening with each passing year. They celebrated 25 years of marriage in 1903, surrounded by their grown children and the first of what would become many grandchildren. The party was held under the old oak tree in Idaho City, the same tree where Wade had waited for Nora all those years ago. "I was so scared you would not come," Wade said as they danced, moving slower now but still in perfect rhythm with each other. "I was scared too," Nora admitted. "Scared of being hurt again, scared of hoping too much. But you came anyway." "I came because some things are worth being scared for. Some loves are worth the risk." Wade pulled her closer, his eyes still holding that same warmth she remembered from when they were young. "I have loved you for over 30 years now, Nora Bennett, and I will love you for however many years we have left. And I love you, Wade. Thank you for leaving that note. Thank you for giving us a chance." They continued to dance as their family watched, smiling at the sight of their parents still so clearly in love after all these years. The sun set behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the valley, but the old oak tree stood strong, a witness to a love that had endured through hardship and doubt to become something unbreakable. As twilight deepened, Thomas approached his parents with a smile. "Some of us younger folks want to dance too, you know." Wade laughed and released Nora into their son's arms, watching as Thomas spun his mother around the makeshift dance floor. Emma came to claim her father, and they joined the dancing. 4 generations celebrating love and family and the choices that had brought them all together. Later that night, back at the ranch, Wade and Nora sat on their porch watching the stars come out. The house was quiet, their children and grandchildren having returned to their own homes. It was just the two of them again as it had been in the beginning. "No regrets?" Wade asked, holding her hand. "Not a single one," Nora said firmly. "Every choice, every challenge, every joy, it all led us here. How could I regret any of it? I used to wonder what my life would have been like if I had never left that note, if I had stayed away forever. And now I know I would have been a coward and a fool. I would have missed out on the best parts of being alive." He raised her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, a gesture he had repeated countless times over their marriage. "You gave my life meaning, Nora. You and our children, this place we built together. Everything good in my life started the day you walked to that oak tree." "We built it together," Nora corrected gently. "You came back. You put in the work. You showed me I could trust you. That took courage, too." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that only comes from decades of knowing someone completely. The creek babbled in the background, and an owl hooted from somewhere in the pines. The mountains stood eternal and unchanging, watching over the valley as they had for millions of years, and would for millions more. The Bennett Ranch continued to operate for many more years, becoming a landmark in the area. Wade trained horses into his 70s, finally stepping back only when his body insisted he slow down. Nora sewed until her hands grew too stiff with arthritis, then switched to teaching her granddaughters and great-granddaughters the craft she had perfected over a lifetime. They grew old together in the cabin Wade had built with his own hands, surrounded by family and love. On warm days, they would sit on the porch in matching rocking chairs, watching their great-grandchildren play in the same meadow where their own children had played. They held hands, told stories of the old days, and marveled at how quickly time had passed. "If I had it to do over," Wade said one afternoon when he was 83 and Nora was 81, "I would not change a single thing, except maybe I would have left that note sooner." Nora laughed, her eyes crinkling at the corners in the way he had always loved. "If you had left it sooner, we might not have been ready. Everything happened exactly when it was supposed to. You really believe that?" "I do. We both needed to grow up, to learn who we were apart before we could be together. Your leaving, as much as it hurt, gave us both that time." Wade considered this, then nodded slowly. "I think you might be right. You are usually right about these things." "Usually." Nora raised an eyebrow in mock offense. "Always, you mean?" "Yes, dear, always." They laughed together, the sound of it carrying across the meadow to where their family worked and played. It was a good sound, the sound of a life well lived and love well earned. When Wade passed away peacefully in his sleep at 85, Nora grieved deeply, but without bitterness. They had been given more years together than many couples could dream of, and every one of those years had been precious. She continued living at the ranch for another 3 years, cared for by her children, refusing to leave the place where she and Wade had built their life together. On a warm September morning, very much like the morning when she had received Wade's note so many decades before, Nora asked her granddaughter to take her to the old oak tree in Idaho City. The tree was smaller now, damaged by storms and age, but it still stood, a gnarled reminder of the past. "This is where it all began," Nora told her granddaughter, who had heard the story many times but never tired of it. "This is where your grandfather waited for me, hoping I would come, hoping I would take a chance on him." "Were you scared?" the young woman asked, Terrified, Nora admitted. "But I came anyway, and it changed everything. Remember that, sweetheart. When something matters, when someone matters, do not let fear stop you from taking that chance." Nora passed away peacefully a few weeks later, surrounded by her family, her last words a whispered, "I am coming, Wade." They buried her next to her husband on a hill overlooking their ranch, beneath 2 pine trees that would stand sentinel over their graves for generations to come. The Bennett ranch stayed in the family, passed down through Thomas, and then to his children. The cabin was eventually turned into a museum of sorts, preserving the story of Wade and Nora Bennett, the cowboy and the seamstress who had built a life of love from a foundation of hope and second chances. And in Idaho City, despite storms and development and the passage of time, the old oak tree remained. It became a local legend, a place where people went when they needed courage to take a chance on love. Young couples would carve their initials into the bark, hoping their love would be as enduring as that of the couple who had met there so long ago. The note that had started it all, carefully preserved by Nora and then by her children, was framed and hung in the cabin-turned-museum. Visitors would read the simple words, "I'll be at the old oak tree if you feel the same way," and smile at the romance of it, the way a few words had changed 2 lives forever. Because in the end, that is what it came down to. A cowboy willing to take a risk and leave his heart on paper. A woman brave enough to show up despite her hurt and fear. 2 people choosing to build something together, to work through challenges, to create a love that would last not just their lifetimes, but would echo through generations. The mountains of Idaho kept their secrets, but the story of Wade and Nora Bennett became one worth telling. It reminded people that love was not just about grand gestures or perfect moments. It was about showing up, doing the work, making the choice every single day to stay and fight and believe in something bigger than yourself. Their great-great-grandchildren still lived in Idaho, carrying forward the legacy of hard work and honest love. The Bennett name was respected throughout the territory and beyond, synonymous with integrity and quality. But more than any business success or material wealth, what Wade and Nora had left behind was the proof that love could heal old wounds, that people could change and grow, that second chances were worth giving. On anniversaries of their first meeting at the oak tree, the family would gather to celebrate. They would tell the story again, of the note and the wait and the decision to take a chance on love. Children would act out scenes, adults would laugh at familiar parts, and everyone would feel connected to something larger than themselves. The ranch house that had grown from Wade's simple cabin now sprawled across the property, rooms added and modified over the decades. But at its heart was still that original room with the 3 windows facing east, where every morning the sunrise painted the mountains gold. It was considered the best room in the house, reserved for special occasions and visiting family members, a reminder of where it all began. Local historians documented the Bennett story, recognizing it as part of the larger narrative of Idaho's settlement and growth. They collected oral histories from descendants, preserved photographs and letters, mapped out the original property lines. The story took on a life of its own, becoming part of the cultural heritage of the region. But beyond the history and the legacy, beyond the business success and the family tree that branched in all directions, the heart of the story remained simple. A man and a woman who loved each other, who chose each other, who built a life together one day at a time. They had not been perfect, their path had not been smooth, but they had been real and honest and committed. In an old chest in the museum cabin, visitors could still see the blue calico dress Nora had worn that first day at the oak tree. Next to it was Wade's worn hat, the one he had held nervously in his hands. There was the grandmother's ring, returned to the family after Nora's death, still shining despite its age. There were photographs of the family at various stages, letters exchanged during Wade's brief absences on business, even a child's drawing of a horse that Thomas had made for his father. These artifacts told a story of ordinary people living extraordinary love. They showed that the Wild West was not just about outlaws and gold rushes, but also about people building homes and families, creating communities, establishing roots in a harsh but beautiful landscape. And always at the center of it all was that note, those simple words that had required so much courage to write and so much faith to answer. "I'll be at the old oak tree if you feel the same way." An invitation, a hope, a declaration wrapped in vulnerability. Nora had felt the same way. She had gone to the oak tree, had given Wade another chance, had chosen to believe in possibility rather than protect herself from pain. That choice, made on a September morning in 1878, had rippled outward through time, creating waves that were still being felt generations later. As the sun set over the Idaho mountains on another day, the old oak tree stood alone, smaller now but still present. Birds nested in its branches, children climbed its trunk, lovers carved their initials into its bark. It had witnessed so much over the years, this unlikely survivor in an inhospitable climate, and it would witness more before its time finally came. But it would always be remembered as the place where Wade Bennett had waited for Nora Mitchell, where she had chosen hope over fear, where their story had truly begun. And that was enough. That was everything. The Bennett legacy continued, children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren carrying forward the values Wade and Nora had embodied. They worked hard, loved deeply, took care of their community, and remembered where they came from. The ranch prospered, the family grew, and the story lived on. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the work was done and the children were asleep, you could almost feel them there. Wade and Nora, sitting on that porch watching the sunset, hands entwined, hearts at peace. They had built something that lasted, something real and true and beautiful. They had taken a chance on love and won everything that mattered. Their story became a testament to the power of second chances, the importance of courage, the strength of commitment. It showed that love was not always easy or simple, but it was always worth it. That the hard work of building a relationship, of choosing someone every day, of weathering storms together, that work paid off in ways that could not be measured but only felt. The Wild West was a place of opportunity and danger, of harsh conditions and incredible beauty. Into that landscape, Wade and Nora had planted their love and watched it grow into something that sustained not just themselves but generations to come. They had faced challenges together, celebrated victories together, grieved losses together, and through it all, they had held onto each other. And it had all started with a note, left on a doorstep in Idaho City, asking a question that required the bravest answer. Nora had given that answer not just with words but with her life, choosing Wade and choosing love, and choosing to believe that sometimes broken things could be mended stronger than before. As the years turned into decades, and the decades turned into a century, the story of Wade and Nora Bennett remained. It was told at weddings and anniversaries, taught to children as an example of true love, referenced in times of doubt or difficulty. When someone in the family faced a hard choice about love, someone else would inevitably say, "Remember Wade and Nora, remember the oak tree, remember that some things are worth the risk." And they were. Some things, some people, some loves are absolutely worth whatever risk is required. Wade and Nora had proven that beyond any doubt. Their love story was not about perfection or ease. It was about two imperfect people choosing to love each other perfectly, in all the ways that mattered. The mountains stood eternal. The creek continued its endless journey, and the land that Wade had bought and built upon continued to sustain his descendants. But more precious than any of that was the love he and Nora had created, a love that had transcended death and time to become something legendary, something that inspired others to be brave enough to leave their own notes, to show up at their own oak trees, to take chances on love even when it was scary. Because in the end, that is what their story taught. Love is a risk, but it is the best risk you will ever take. It requires courage and commitment and the willingness to be vulnerable. It demands work and patience and forgiveness. But when you find the right person, when you build something real together, when you create a love that lasts, nothing in the world is more valuable. Wade and Nora had found that love, had built that life, had created that legacy. And their story, beginning with a simple note and a choice made beneath an old oak tree, would live on as long as people believed in the power of love to transform lives and create meaning in an uncertain world. Their love was a light that continued to shine long after they were gone, guiding others toward their own chances at happiness, their own moments of choice, their own love stories waiting to be written.